I want to welcome you to our event tonight. This is the WeWork Labs Great Reads and Listens Club. So welcome to your participation. Thanks for being here. My name is Dylan. I'm your moderator for this conversation tonight. I'm an integrative identity coach, and that's the work that I do with individuals and companies. And of course, I'm here with our guest tonight, this person I'm going to be moderating this amazing conversation with, Randi Zuckerberg, who is, I want to make sure I get all the important things. Randi is an entrepreneur, she's an investor, she's a best-selling author, and she is founder and CEO of Zuckerberg Media. So that's a round of applause for all of those things that she's accomplished. Exactly. It's so great. I'm so glad I've been really looking forward to this. I know we both said that. So we're just gonna jump right in. So I really loved your book, as I told you.
Thank you.
And especially loved your idea of normalizing the idea of doing your best, which really goes against the current cultural narrative of hustle and grind, in a way.
Definitely.
Yeah? So do you see that changing since you wrote your book?
I think it's definitely a process, but I feel it's funny because my entire childhood, all I wanted to do was sing on Broadway. That's all I wanted to do with my life. And I was performing in operas. I dropped math and science in high school to focus more on,
that was a great decision.
Performing, which I thought my parents were gonna die, honestly, when I did that. And then I turned around and was like, I wanna apply to Harvard. And everyone was like, do you really think that's a good idea after you drop math and science and like only sang opera? And when I went to the admissions, they said, you know what? We look for two kinds of students, some that are well-balanced, who are kind of good at everything, and some that are well-lopsided, people who are really gonna make the class interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that moment really defined just my philosophy for the entire way that I know I've lived my life and a lot of entrepreneurs live their life, which is if you want to do something in a way that's excellent and give it your all, you can't really have a well-balanced life in the moment. You have to be a little more lopsided.
That's right.
And I think it's okay to give ourselves permission to do that as long as everything balances out in the long run. So as long as you take turns a little bit in what you're lopsided in.
And that's exactly what you address, you know, is like, to be able to do it, you can't try to do it all.
Yes.
You just gotta pick three.
But that being said, I
day.
do not advocate that anyone drops math and science. Now
It
that
worked for
especially
you.
I have made my entire career in STEM fields, which is very ironic considering that. I would not recommend that. I think more women especially should stay in math and science and learn to code. So don't follow my example.
Right, if it works for them, right?
That's right.
Yeah, you followed your heart, totally. Okay, so this is one thing that definitely comes up a lot with my clients, I know, and just people in general, and I would love to hear, because you address this in your book too. What's your advice for how to make time to take time off for yourself, whether it's a day or a vacation, right? When it literally feels impossible. When you look at your schedule and you're like, there's just no way I can pull this off.
It does.
Yeah.
I think that takes the most discipline of anything in life is saying no to things.
Right.
I think especially for all the entrepreneurs here, the reason that we went into this is because we got attracted to something that was kind of new and shiny and exciting, that to me is my number one thing that I continuously work on a daily basis is saying no to things that are distracted or not letting kind of the shiny things that look great in the moment distract me from the core of my business and what I want to do. And it is a constant struggle now, even 7 years after starting my own business. So I think that's something that really any entrepreneur can take away as kind of ruthlessly prioritizing your own time and your own goals. And in some ways, Pick 3 has helped me with that, because if I say, okay, these are my priorities today, sorry, that isn't in my priorities, maybe it feels mean, it takes a little getting used to, but once you start to define what you stand for and your own priorities, it becomes much easier to structure your calendar. I think the other thing we have to all think about is our phones and our screen time. I know for me, sometimes I look at the tally of how much time I spent on my screen that day, and it is more than I slept that night.
Ooh.
And that is never a good sign. And so one thing we try to do in our household is take kind of a digital Shabbat on Saturdays, where we just, I wouldn't recommend just going cold turkey on a day without your phone. It's very hard. Start small, but now we've gotten to the point where we really try to go a full day on Saturday without checking our devices.
That's amazing. So you just decide that you're going to just make it happen.
That's right. And what you'll find is that you train the people in your life to know that you are unreachable.
Ooh,
at
say more
certain
about how you do
times.
that.
It takes time.
Yeah.
But no one else in your life is going to set those boundaries for you, unfortunately. I think we all spend a lot of time sitting and waiting for other people to kind of give us permission to unplug or permission to have boundaries. And I found that no one in my life was creating boundaries for me. And so I just had to put a line in the sand in order to value my own health and my own family and my own time, really.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I don't know. What about you? What have you found?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it starts with an intentional decision, and then practice makes it easier.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's still hard because people are constantly coming at you, and everyone wants a little, and you have to decide, does this fit into something that I want and need?
That's right.
Or not. I mean, I think over time, it's just, you just develop non-negotiables.
Yes.
Like non-negotiable for me is like breakfast every day. If you're gonna interfere with my breakfast, it's not gonna happen.
Totally.
Like it's just what it is. Going to bed, my bedtime.
Can I ask you a question? I know you're interviewing me, but one thing I always love to ask people, especially around the topic of being well balanced, I'm always so curious to ask people, what are kind of the 2 or 3 things you are most proud of in your life that you've done so far? And
we didn't rehearse this. No,
and did you feel that those things happened when you had balance, or did you have to go all in to accomplish them?
Oh, wow.
Because I think we spend so much time talking about balance, but my hypothesis is that most people, when they list the things they're proud of, those things did not happen with their balance. So I'm curious.
I would agree with you. I would actually agree because I know that change. So I went back to grad school and I got a degree partly in behavioral change with people and cultures, and change happens in fits and starts. Right?
Yes.
So it happens it's like, run. Okay, I need to relax for a little while. And then run. So I think a lot of the things I did when I was just close my eyes and run. Just run out of the burning building and just do it. Otherwise, you'll never get the courage.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
I mean, one of the things that I know that I look back on as being really proud, I ran the Chicago Marathon right after I graduated from college. And to be totally honest, you can't call what I did running. I got passed by someone wearing a chicken suit.
Oh.
So that's embarrassing.
Wow.
But I did start at the start line and finish at the finish line. And I feel I'm so proud of that now, almost 20 years later now. And that was definitely not something that I could have done if I were balanced. I was spending tons of time training, and that was a huge focus of 6 months of my life. And anyway, I sometimes worry that we're talking about balance a little too much, that it's okay to be in a phase of your life or your career where you're more lopsided.
Totally. In fact, it's reality.
Yes.
It's reality. Everyone keeps talking about this balance thing, but it's we're constantly being pulled out of balance. So the trick is how to just work with that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
See,
how to make
this is why we're doing this.
How
This
to
is
make
great.
sure that you're not completely ignoring some areas of your life, that you're getting them in enough to set you up for long-term health.
Totally. And so next question, because this is something I know we both feel very strongly about, is this word sleep. I have 2 specific questions for you, okay? So with so much media attention with sleep, and human beings are very intelligent, they know they need it. We know that we need it, the body literally needs sleep.
And we still don't.
Still don't do it. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, last night as I was I should really go to bed, and then it's 2 a.m. and I'm still watching RuPaul's Drag Race.
Nice,
I'm why? Well, this is a great show, but why am I still awake at 2 a.m.?
Because it's a good show.
No, I almost didn't even include, so in my book, Pick 3, I have kind of 5 categories that I feel encompass most of what we prioritize between, and it's work, sleep, family, friends, fitness, pick 3. And I almost did not include sleep in there because I was like, well, that's something we have to do anyway, so do I have to include it? And then to your point, I realized if we do not consciously and mindfully choose sleep, we don't do it.
Right.
There is a study that came out last year that in daylight savings in the fall, when we gain 1 extra hour of sleep, heart attacks drop in the United States by 30% that day.
Wow.
On 1 hour of extra sleep cumulatively that we get. And so, I mean, there's so much evidence and science and studies out there around even a few less hours of sleep increase your risk for cancer. I mean, it's so crazy, and we still don't do it. I have a 4-year-old, and I see what happens if he goes to bed even 20 minutes later than his bedtime. He falls apart as a human being.
He behaves like most adults.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Like, he just completely loses his shit 20 minutes later. And, so I can actually see the cause and effect of getting less sleep on a human being, and then we still procrastinate.
I know.
So it's something I think we all have to very mindfully think about and prioritize. Now, that being said, I live in the real world. Sometimes you're just not going to get a great night of sleep. So I also tried to include in the book some hacks for faking it if you are completely sleep deprived. But I would not recommend going more than a night or 2 in a row.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, all sorts of things like start to happen that I think people even chalk up to other things, and it doesn't really, I know that I notice that with my clients. It's like, it doesn't occur to them, oh, I'm actually sleep deprived. Like, that's why I'm having a hard time focusing, or, yeah.
I think of the few times in kind of my professional career that I've like gone and cried in a bathroom or something like that, and that has never happened when I had a full night of sleep the night before.
I concur. So what are your secrets? What are, especially as a mom, which is, I'm not a parent, so I don't have that tremendous challenge. I'm just like my own bad habits, right? Get in my way. But like, as a parent, how do you do it?
No, it's really hard. And also, so I'm 6 months pregnant right now, so I am trying to bank sleep as much as I possibly can, which is not a thing. You can't bank sleep, but I know I'm in for kind of 4 months of grief on the other end of this. And so I know what it's like to go for 4 months without sleeping, and it's just, I mean, I begged my husband at one point to get a night nanny to come in for a few nights because I finally broke, and I was like, do you know what? I don't believe money buys happiness in life, except sometimes it buys you sleep, and that is happiness.
I love that you did that for yourself, actually.
And that was really, so I think, it's, again, something that I always have to prioritize in my life. I was pretty amazed when I started talking to folks in the sleep space about the ideal temperature for a room is much lower than most people think it is. So I started setting my room to kind of 67 degrees Celsius. I always thought it was warmer, which is like pretty cold to sleep in, but is like actually gets a good, I don't know, some people are laughing, maybe that's not cold. What? Sorry, Fahrenheit. Oh my gosh, I said Celsius. I'm sorry.
We knew.
You have to go with me. Again, I told you I'm 6 months pregnant. My brain is mush. Okay, it is completely mush. I'm honestly, I'm proud of myself for talking in full sentences right now. So thank you. You're correct. 67 Fahrenheit. Celsius would be a disaster.
I was just gonna let it go,
be like
but
boiling.
it's fine.
Thank you. And you totally just smiled at me and let me go with it. But yes, thank you.
How about another question?
But yes, no, it's okay. But the ideal temperature for sleeping is much colder than we all think, and so little things like that of like the importance of blackout shades, and there are a lot of tips in there that I was not doing in my own life. The importance of not having your cell phone right next to your bed.
Yeah. I mean, when I made friends with like people who were doing Chinese medicine, and they were like, there's literally things that happen to your body, like your body's going through things that like it has to happen at 1:30 in the morning, and if you're not asleep, it's not going to happen. Like don't quote me on this. Like like the cleansing of your liver or something. I'm like, that happens at a certain hour, and it's like if you're not asleep and you're watching the shows, and then I started to think like, wow, you're like, I'm literally like playing a game with my body. Like, please don't do the best job you can. I'm gonna mess with you, and then that changes priorities.
No, it's pretty wild, and this is not an area that I knew anything about even a year ago.
Yeah, it's very important. I was so glad to see what you said.
Thank you.
So, what do you think, in your opinion, is of your 5 Can you say them again?
Yes, work, sleep, family, friends, fitness.
Great. Which one do you
Fahrenheit is a 6th.
think? Which one? You didn't know it was going to be this fun, did you guys? Which one do you think people prioritize the least?
I think it depends on, at least, I don't want to generalize by age or phase of your life, but at least what I see is I see a lot of people when they start to be in the stage that they're having children, the number one thing that starts to go away is friends. And I think, I can understand why you're in a self-preservation mode where your family is very important to you, work, you're kind of struggling to get sleep or take care of your health. But what I see happening with that, especially for a lot of women, is that they'll go almost a full decade without prioritizing networking, mentorship, kind of peer support, and that can suddenly get very, very emotionally lonely. It can put you back professionally in your career if you're not focusing on those relationships. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, my parents are retired. They are like YOLOing it up in life, and they seem to only prioritize their friends and traveling and everything. So that's why I think the focus should really be on kind of balancing you out over the long term of your life and recognizing that certain age groups or certain phases that you're in, you're going to have things that you prioritize more than others, but to kind of be conscious about the things that you're not prioritizing and figure out if there are hacks or ways that you can get them in.
And I like how I think your book just like solves it all because you're like, pick 3 today and tomorrow's another day. You can pick 3 the next day.
That's right.
So it's like, if you didn't get to the emails, you could just, it'll be there tomorrow.
Now, I mean, I think the way that, so I'm on the road almost 100 days a year, which is in some ways very, very difficult, having children and having that. In some ways, though, it kind of makes it easier because I can get to segment my life where I know I have kind of a pick 3 on the road and a pick 3 at home. And so it makes it much easier. I think it actually gets harder when we have a routine where every day starts to be the same and the same 2 things start falling on the wayside every single day.
Yes.
So I think no matter what type of schedule any of us leads, it's important to really be thinking about where we are.
Yep. So which one do you prioritize? Which one are you prioritizing? What are your 3 today?
Coffee, no.
Yeah.
No, today I'm at home. I'm not on the road, so I am able to take my kids to school, and spend time with them, which is great. So definitely family.
Yep.
I guess is this work or friends? I don't know.
I think
a
it's
little
both.
Yeah.
It's blurring. Yep.
And I promise you that I will go home and get some sleep tonight because I'm up to date on RuPaul's Drag Race.
Great.
So that means that I can go to bed.
Okay, good. So, and then tomorrow's another day, and you pick another.
That's
3.
right.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'll
It's
pick
like
another
picking
day,
cards, yeah.
hopefully get to the gym, things like that, and
Right.
hopefully it balances out.
It's great. I love it. Okay, we already actually asked that one. So I am curious, how do you infuse this holistic not balance or lopsided, but like
Yes.
holistic, like valuing all of these very important things, like these values, into your company?
It's, again, I think definitely something that's a constant struggle because you have to also realize, especially if you have employees or business partners, that other people have different personal priorities from you. There are different phases of their life. They are going through situations. So I think making sure that you lead or you actually come to your team with empathy and a care for people's health. I know there's a lot of work environments that I've been in kind of startup cultures where it can be very easy to burn yourself out and burn out the other people around you.
Yes.
And I think that's why so many tech companies and startups have such high turnover, that people are leaving every few years. And so instead, I think it's really important to be thinking, how can we build a culture that's for the long term? How can we build a company or culture where people want to be together for a decade or more? And you're not going to do that by burning out.
Right, absolutely. I so agree. So you lead with empathy. Do you feel like you just walking the talk and you modeling it of how you're doing it for yourself?
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of times that I will tell folks on my team, you can email me on a Saturday and you won't get a response.
Nice.
And, so you could do that if you want, and no judgment. Maybe Saturday is a great day for other people in the organization to sit down and catch up on things. Maybe they have other obligations in the evenings or during the week, and that's their day. But I think, I like to think that by modeling that I set boundaries for myself and take breaks, that hopefully that gives other people in the organization the permission to set boundaries for themselves too.
That's great. That's great. And so what I hear is, and this was a question I had, is how do you communicate your pick three, your three on any, it sounds like the lotto, but your three on any given day, how do you, it sounds like you're very intentional about expressing that and like telling
Yes.
people so that people aren't like waiting for an email response.
Yeah, but it also
Like, where is
helps
she?
me. When I say it out loud, then other people hold me accountable to it. I think, like most things in life, the second you tell other people that you have a goal or something you want to do, then it really makes you feel like you have to stick with it.
Yep.
So I find sometimes that it's easy for me to tell myself that I have priorities and then not stick with them. But the second I put it out in the universe, I feel like I actually have to walk the walk what I just did.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a great built-in buddy system. So let's see. I feel like I'm skipping the questions that,
No,
based
it's-
on our previous conversation. I really loved when you were mentioning, because I know this is a thing for a lot of people, when you were talking about a scenario where a person, we'll say a woman, was at a party
Yeah.
and she had a career, and at this point she was staying at home with her kids, and she introduced herself as just a mom, or
Yes.
like I'm being a mom now, and people literally walked away. Like, that's not the totality of who she is, but in that split second,
Yeah.
like, she wasn't a career woman just because of what she said in that
Yes.
moment. So, would love to have you share more about that.
It's interesting. So I really tried for the book to I interviewed almost 50 people, not celebrities, not well-known people, people who are really going through a complicated time in their life where, because the other thing is that sometimes you don't get to pick your three every day. It is, a wonderful situation to be able to wake up in the morning and say, here are the three I'm gonna pick, but sometimes that's just not feasible. Sometimes someone is very ill or there's a death in the family. Sometimes you lose your job or your company is in you're in a startup and your company is, on the brink of a disaster or a huge growth influx, and it's just, you don't get to choose what things you're prioritizing that day. So I tried to interview a large cross-section of people who, some of them get to choose, some of them life chooses for them, and how you prioritize and how you use that. And now I've completely forgotten the question you asked me, because I was just...
about really people really owning that
Yes.
that identity, but being judged.
Yes. Oh, yes, you're talking about the mom.
Yeah, like I'm a mom now, and
that's
it's
right.
like, but she didn't even get to finish. Like, and I'm also a career woman, because the person's already
Yes.
walking away and judging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this was someone who had been in one of the highest ranking positions in Major League Baseball. I think she was the general counsel of Major League Baseball,
Wow.
and took a few years off to be a stay-at-home mom. And she suddenly found that when she walked into a room and people didn't think she was kind of immediately valuable to them, they walked away. And it can be very interesting because sometimes the three things that you want to prioritize in your life at a given moment don't really match up with kind of also wanting to get out there and network and further your career or do other things. So she had a lot of great advice in the book for people who do want to take a timeout or a break in their career. How do you keep a toe still in there so that you have your optionality whenever you want to go back. Yep. But it is interesting. I sometimes even see in my own life, I have like 20 side hustles, and altogether those side hustles make a career. So people say, Randi, what do you do? And I don't quite know how to answer them. I'm like, what should I say today? I'm an author, I'm a radio host, I'm a Broadway actress. Like pick one of those things. And it makes people very uncomfortable when they can't immediately put you in a box. When they can't immediately ask you, what do you do, and you have a ready answer for them, it makes people very uncomfortable. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are multi-hyphenates like that.
Ooh,
we don't easily fit in boxes. And so that's something I've had to get comfortable with, is picking my 3 and not feeling like I need to make other people comfortable or I need to fit into the things that other people think I should be prioritizing or doing.
Yeah, because we've created this this kind of culture like on social media. It's like, what are the words that you're going to use to describe who you are?
That's right. What's your brand?
Mine change like
Yes.
every 5 minutes. You know?
That's
I'm like,
right.
what do I feel like today? But like, what if that was the norm? That instead of just labeling ourselves like these 4 things that are these static. I mean, it's not real. It's not.
That's right.
We're constantly
'Cause
changing and evolving.
I am a mom and I am a techie, but then I kind of had this wild experience where after a decade working in Silicon Valley and with Facebook, I got cast in a Broadway show. So see, I focused on Broadway, I came back to it. I maybe shouldn't have dropped science, as you guys saw from earlier. But so I got cast in Rock of Ages, which is an 80s rock musical on Broadway. And I left Silicon Valley and I left that culture to come to New York and perform on Broadway. And everyone in my life is like, that is the dumbest thing ever. And it was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life to get to star on Broadway and do that. And it really set my life in a new direction in New York, combining tech and the arts. But it makes people very uncomfortable when they can't quite figure out who you are or what you do
or
in one sentence.
what you are.
Exactly.
Like, what box can I put you in?
That's right.
I love that you did that. It showed tremendous. And it's one of the questions that I wrote down is like, how did you know that was the right thing to do? And then I'm sure you got a lot of people having an opinion about what you should do.
Yes.
How did you override that and say, I'm doing this?
I think I kind of just flash forwarded to the end of my life and I thought, okay, am I going to sit there at the end of my life and think, I wish I didn't sing on Broadway so a few people would like me? Like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna sit there and that's what hopefully I'm gonna be alive to tell my great-grandchildren about is how I stood up there and made my Broadway debut and did that. It was just one of the most exciting things for me. So I think sometimes in your life you have to, it's healthy to shake up your pick 3 and your priorities, step out of your comfort zone, do things that make you wildly uncomfortable and make the people around you wildly uncomfortable. And I think that's where we grow the most and we learn the most and we achieve the most success.
Totally. I completely agree with you. And you know a little bit about me, so I did that myself. And so I think a lot of the reason people don't do that is the fear of failure, fear of rejection, right? So they want to do this thing, but they're afraid what's going to happen. Yeah. And so with me, when I transitioned, I was like, wow, what happened? What's going to happen? And I suffered, some casualties. I lost my family, I lost a relationship, but I had the same mentality that you had, which is I don't want to be 80 years old in a rocking chair saying, I wish I had done that. I wanted to be able to be I thought it, I wanted to do it, and I did it.
Totally.
So I totally relate to that feeling. Just, you got one life.
That's right.
And you can't do it. I loved how you said also, you can't live to make other people happy.
That's right. And sometimes I devoted a whole section inside the Friends chapter to what happens if you make a life change and you suddenly find your friend group to be toxic or not supportive.
Please speak to this.
Because I think that happens for a lot of us is maybe we want to go through a major health transition in our life, or maybe we want to do something wildly different and or maybe you want to get sober and you suddenly find that you're surrounded by people who don't support those goals and who are quite frankly toxic to those goals. And so I think a lot of us go through periods of our life where we have to reevaluate the people who we surround ourselves with.
Absolutely, and I really loved when you wrote, I appreciate in general your candor in your book. You really spoke to things that I know I was really interested in, and I know people would really wrestle with. So can you speak a little bit to any best practices you have or ideas, or basically how you navigate the people wanting, how to sort out friends from frauds, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's a tough one, and I think especially, so I grew up here in New York City, and I kind of was raised in this culture that it's a zero-sum game, and the people around you are your competitors. And and then I moved out to Silicon Valley, and it was suddenly I found it to be a much more open and collaborative culture, which I had to really reprogram myself, because I had really just been trained my entire childhood here that, you know, if someone else wins, you lose, which is such an unhealthy way to grow up when you think about it. I think it also really stopped me from developing as strong a peer network as I wish I should have. Because what I ended up realizing, I think way too late, was that your best mentors in life are the people sitting right around you, are the people who you rise together, who are going through the same experiences, who you can learn from. And so for me, it was a lot about shifting my own mindset to kind of appreciate the people around me a little more. But of course, I think we all have to reevaluate and reassess the people and the priorities in our life, and make sure. It can be very painful if you want to prioritize something, and that means that you have to do a little spring cleaning with the people around you.
Yeah. How do you sort that for yourself? Like you spoke to kind of vetting, because like relationships take time to build, right? And so like, especially in this industry, you want to be networking, you want to have an open mind, you want to be building relationships with people, but then when do you start to get that feeling of like, this isn't really going to be a win-win? Like do you get like an intuition, or like
Absolutely. Especially you mentioned in the intro, I do a lot of investing. I do quite a bit of angel investing, and I think that's the hardest thing when I'm sitting with someone and we're talking about their business or they're pitching. Like, I find often I have to make a very snap judgment in a short amount of time. Like, is this a person that I want to be in business with? Is this a company that I want to be involved with for years?
Yeah.
And it can be very difficult when you're only given a limited set of information or a limited time with someone to come up with that.
Yep.
But I think, at least for me, there's certain things now that I've learned to look for over the years that I think, have certain, great entrepreneurs really stand out, especially in a pitch. But it can be very hard, and I think we all go through that process of evaluating and determining what we're looking for in other people.
Yeah. So trust our own values, like you were saying, trust our own values, and then trust our intuition.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of times, especially for me, when someone's coming in to pitch, they think they're selling me on their company, but really they're selling me on them. It's really the person. Because I have never invested in a company where 5 years later the company looked the same as it did the day they pitched me.
That's
never.
Right. That's right.
All companies change and morph and pivot over time. And so when someone walks into the room, what you're really looking for is this the person that I want to be in business with for 5 years? Is this the person that when shit hits the fan and we're running out of money and everything, like they have the grit to stick with it and we're going to want to work with it together, or they're going to run?
All the more reason for them to be taking care of themselves.
That's right, exactly.
Right? To have that grit and that
That's
resilience. Right. Yeah, great. Let's see. Okay, this is a big one. So at some point, you were talking about mentors and the people around you. At some point, we all come up against our own growing edges, like the limits of what we know. So we have to ask for help.
Absolutely.
So what's your advice, or how do you do it? Either one, like what you advise other people, or what you do for how to manage the vulnerability of asking for help with managing the fear of like looking like you don't know what you're doing.
That's right. I think it can be very challenging, especially if you have people reporting to you in your business, where you want to walk into a room and seem confident enough that they have faith in you as a leader. But at the same time, you don't want to walk into a room and pretend to know answers that you don't know. And so I think a lot of us are walking this very delicate balance of when do we ask for help and when do we kind of buck up and seem confident in our lives. I think for me, one thing I've really appreciated over the years is understanding what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I think, in school, if someone gets a bad grade, we kind of like double down on that subject and help them do better. Right. But once you get out in the real world of business, you're like, no, let's double down on the A's. Let's double down on the area that you're good at and kind of find other people to fill in the gaps of where you're weaker. Yep. And that's something I've always thought. So how that applies, especially for startups, is I think it's very important who you choose as a co-founder or a founding team, because a lot of people are drawn to people who are just like them. It feels comfortable. It feels like that's someone I want to be around to start a company. And that often is the worst choice for a co-founding team. You really want to have people that have very different and complementary skill sets, and or think about the world in a different way that will challenge you and challenge your mindset to think differently and with diversity. So that's something definitely that I think about a lot. Is I think needing help and needing other skill sets in your life is a wonderful and a positive thing, not something that we should feel insecure about.
And just own it. Just own it, and then be maybe discerning about who you ask for help from.
That's right. Yeah. I think definitely be discerning, and definitely there's a difference between asking for help and just feeling a little bit insecure about your knowledge. I think a lot of us go through the day, especially if you're starting a company and you, it's a new trail you're blazing that's never been done before. Most of us go through our day with a degree of insecurity about what we're doing and how qualified we are. Yeah. So there's a difference between that and actually having a skill set where you need help and you need to bring in other people. And so I think especially a lot of entrepreneurs and women in particular can really stand to kind of get over that imposter syndrome a little more and buck up their confidence. I know that's something that I'm always constantly working on.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the cultural, gender norms. I mean, I think actually sitting in the middle of the binary, I've got a great perspective. It affects both ends of the binary spectrum, where I think women, of course, get the well, you already don't know what you're doing, so of course you would ask for help, right? I'm totally generalizing. And then guys, there's that pressure of you should know the answer, so asking for help makes you weak. I'm totally generalizing. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's funny. I often joke that my best tip for getting ahead as a woman in tech is to have a man's name like Randi. Because I cannot even tell you over the years how many meetings I got because I would just be emailing with someone and they couldn't tell over email. They thought it was a dude. And
Write that down.
I'd show up and they would be like, well, where's Randy? And I'm like, sucker.
Got in there.
That was my competitive advantage in
Good for
tech.
you.
But yes, it's definitely, it's definitely a very real and complicated issue.
And so the way how have you, other than using your name, which is great.
Well, now it's a giveaway.
Now it's a giveaway, dang it.
Yeah.
Other than that, what do you personally, how have you personally learned, how to?
Yeah, there's so many things I loved about my time in Silicon Valley and my time at Facebook. I think the one thing that I found very challenging in Silicon Valley as a whole is that I was very often the only woman in many rooms that I was in. And that was something that I had to kind of get very used to, walking into a room and feeling like I could have a voice as the lone woman in the room, and feeling comfortable to speak up and have my voice heard. And so that was something that I kind of struggled with off and on. I often felt that I was either, that I was completely invisible and no one noticed me, or I wished I was invisible because people noticed me so much as the only woman in the room that I wished they didn't. And so it was definitely something that I know I struggled with a lot of, these feelings of insecurity and being confident enough to speak up. But I think that's very different from knowing when to ask for help, kind of finding that within you.
Agreed. And so much of what we think people think about us is often not at all what they're thinking about us.
That's right.
Right? So if we just feel confident, most people assume we are.
But it's funny. Even now, I do a lot of lecturing around the world, and people, I don't know maybe especially when I go to other countries, they think I'm like a spokesperson for the entire internet. And so
Oh, you're the one.
Yeah, so they'll you know, like the people will raise their hand and they'll ask like very complicated questions about like Ethereum and blockchain, and the next one's on AI and this, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm one human being, and while I am very curious about all these topics, I do not have the exact answers for you on all of them, and I think sometimes it's okay. I've had to learn to be okay with admitting that also.
I think there's actually a lot of power in saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it demonstrates a lot of confidence and character.
Yes.
To say, I actually don't know. I know where I could find the answer, or I know someone who has it. I think it's very authentic. Yeah. How about a new question?
Sure.
You feel good about that?
Great.
Okay.
I feel great about that.
Speaking of, were we talking about social media? Kind of. Really, and nearly not smooth segue. Okay, so there's this thing about being real, right? There's like this pull to be authentic and be real, but then people are like, but not like that. Yeah. So how do you find, be yourself, but not like that? How do you find?
It's like when someone's taking a photo of you and they're like, twist your body this way, but act natural.
Right.
Like, how do I do that?
There's nothing natural about what's happening. Yeah. So how do you find your personal enough, being real enough versus too much for you?
Yeah.
Sharing too much.
It's hard. I've definitely gone back and forth. I think I've made every mistake in the book. The funny thing was I spent so much time when I was at Facebook coaching other people on how to build their brands online, and it never occurred to me throughout that whole process that we are all brands. That wasn't just a thing for celebrities to build their own brands online. And at some point I turned around and I was like, I've just spent years coaching other people on how to make a brand, and I did not spend 1 minute of effort on my own brand or thinking about that. Right. And so that was something that, again, was very new to me. I've definitely had, ebbing and flowing positions on this, especially as I've had children, and my comfort with different platforms and sharing across different platforms. Mm-hmm. But I generally think, all of us, we've been handed a really golden opportunity to become thought leaders and experts in our niche space for virtually, almost virtually for free, and to be able to do that and to have all this creativity at our fingertips. So it's something that I definitely try to take advantage of, because I know, I wish I had a lot of these tools when I was first graduating college and thinking about what I was going to do. Instead, I had like my dad's like giant camcorder that I was,
No, but there was like real value to that. You know what I mean? So do you feel like there's such a thing as too much?
I think I don't think anyone should feel pressured by anyone else around them in order what to share. I think, certainly if it's the kind of business that you're running, that it would help your business to be out there. And I do think that most founders of businesses have to be the spokesperson for their business. I see a lot of businesses where the founder is shy and they try to bring in someone else to be out there, and it just never works. No one's gonna love your business the way you do, or feel passionate about your idea. So in some way, any of us who are starting something need to get comfortable putting ourselves out there and having a visible presence and be a spokesperson to the world about what we're doing. That does not mean, though, that you have to share about your personal life. If you don't feel comfortable, it doesn't mean that you have to really do anything else. But I think we do have to put ourselves out there as the vocal spokespeople for our ideas.
Definitely. And it depends on the brand, right? And the mission. And Cool. Okay, I have a great question about, let's say you're doing something, it's basically a question of like, when do you persevere versus when do you pivot? Right? So you've been doing something, and then I'm sure you've had to make a lot of decisions like this.
Yes.
And we've been kind of talking about the career, but like anything with your just personal life too.
Or like going to Broadway and literally pivoting as a dance move.
Yes, yes, exactly.
But I think that can be a really hard one, because as an entrepreneur, you need to almost have blinders on. You need to be so laser focused on your vision that you don't get distracted by all the voices and all the chatter around you, because otherwise you'd never get anything done. That being said, though, you can't be too focused on your own vision that you don't take any feedback or you don't listen to the data that's coming in. And so I think there's really this fine line that so many of us are walking of staying true to our vision and our goals and where we want to be a few years out. But also, sometimes the data really speaks to you. About 2 years ago, I launched this kind of techie cafe in Chattanooga, Tennessee, called Sue's Tech Kitchen, where children could come and they could get 3D printed s'mores and like have robots make pancakes and all these things. And we specifically did it in Chattanooga because that the state of Tennessee is really going through a period of transition with losing automotive factories and rebranding as a tech hub. But we kind of launched this idea, and my whole dream was about how families would go through this experience together. And just every time we launched it, what I would see is that the parents would like drop the kids off and then go sit in a corner on their phones, texting the entire time. And I was like, okay, so like I have this vision of what I want to do, but I just can't. I can't have blinders on so much. The data is right in front of me of what parents want. And so we pivoted a lot to now we're doing kind of full drop-off educational programs that combine STEM and food instead of kind of trying to force families into
That's a great example.
into the original vision. But so I think, it's even something I think that all of us are constantly figuring out, okay, like when do we let go of that vision and kind of see the writing on the wall around us.
That's so great. That was so great. That was a great example. Because like you didn't give up completely, but you had to surrender your attachment to like it has to go this way.
Right, it has to go this way with like a family sitting together, enjoying this experience together.
Yeah, really great. You're great.
No,
You really are great.
As you guys have clearly seen, there's a lot more room for personal growth.
No, but and I think that's really one of my biggest takeaways. I mean, I'm a Buddhist, so like that's my whole thing. But like that was one of my biggest takeaways from your book was just like that's your philosophy. You were like, stop trying to be perfect. Stop trying to.
That's right.
It's not possible. Even when you think you're doing it, you're probably way off, and someone's gonna tell you.
Because the guilt will kill you. I was wasting so many hours of my day feeling guilty, like either feeling guilty that I wasn't spending enough time with my children, or if I was with my children, I was just thinking about like all the people that were surpassing me in business who were giving it 110% every day and feeling guilty about that I wasn't doing that. And it's just such a detrimental, wasteful emotion, guilt.
Absolutely.
So I think that was something that I almost had to kind of give myself permission to not feel guilty. And it's still a work in progress. I spent a lot of time beating myself up about a lot of things, but being able to say, you know what, these are my priorities for today or for this week or for right now, really enable you to put a lot of that other chatter aside.
Yeah, because tomorrow's another day.
That's right.
Yeah. So I am curious, and this might be, I think we're almost at time. So I would love to hear.
Because all of these people have other priorities.
I know, they've got places to be.
Not just listening to us
Although
tonight,
they've been a great crowd. Don't you think they've been great? They've been laughing with us.
Absolutely. I know, and especially I feel that I can't see everyone's faces in the back because I have some things going for me in life. Height is not one of them, unfortunately. But so hi to our friends in the back
everybody.
also.
So I am curious, in this moment, off the top of your head, if there was anything you could have done differently that you wouldn't have done, like were there any, looking back, they say hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
So, anything that you've done, family, sleep, any of the five, right, that you would have done differently.
I would have asked for more stock in Facebook. No, I'm just kidding.
We were waiting for you.
No, I think I think one of the biggest things, and I touched on this a little bit before, I wish earlier in life I had really understood the value of peer mentorship and network. I wasted so many years searching for like one mentor. Everyone told me to find one mentor that would kind of solve my problems. And it was such a waste of time because I'd find that person and they either wouldn't have time for me because they were 10 levels above me in their career, or I'd sit with them and all they'd want to do is ask me questions about social media, and then I'd end up mentoring them. And I finally realized when I looked around me that my best mentors all along had just been sitting right next to me. And that sure, when we were 22, we were really junior level, but now those same people are running huge companies and starting and building amazing things. And so I wish I could go back in time and have focused earlier and more intelligently on that peer network.
That's great. That's great. It's just like anyone, you know, the advice they give you, like no one person, even your partner, can fulfill all your needs, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, that idea of like find the one mentor, it's like flawed.
Yes.
It's really flawed, yeah.
Exactly.
So that's really good advice for folks, even starting today, right? We wouldn't even have to do that as young people. We could start it. I mean, we're still young.
Totally.
But,
and I think I would have given myself permission earlier in life to have a lot of interests and be three-dimensional. I think when I went out to Silicon Valley especially, I kind of found myself in this culture where everyone is in tech, everyone's in startups, and so you can't have any side interests or distractions, otherwise it feels like you're frivolous. And so I feel like I wish I gave myself permission earlier to be like, it's okay to want to succeed in business and also want to sing and also want to be a mom and also do these things. You know, you don't have to only have one thing that you want to do with your life.
And you're like this amazing example that it works of success.
I don't know about amazing, but trying.
I love it. I love it. You're doing it.
you.
You're just doing it.
Thank
You know,
you.
you're a thinker and you're a doer. And I think
And
it's really
and if
inspiring.
anyone here is a theater fan, this season, while I am not in front of on the stage anymore, I'm a producer on 3 shows that have just opened on Broadway this season.
That's gotta be
so
really exciting.
I feel like I finally have been able to realize that vision of combining kind of the business skills that I learned in Silicon Valley and the theatrical world that I love, and now have 3 shows that I'm producing.
It's
so
a dream life, right?
It is, yeah.
So I'm curious, what do you still want to do that you haven't done yet? Because you've really done a lot of things. What's left? I'm serious.
Well, I guess have a 3rd child.
Okay,
or
that's
something. So that's
That's good.
when I'm working the final. And actually, in my book, I talk about how I was very ambivalent about having another child. So sorry, 3rd kid, if you ever read the book. But yeah, I just think for me that the thing that's so beautiful about the world is that the careers all of us will have in 10 years from now don't even exist today. And so I can't even look you in the eye and really tell you what I want to accomplish or what I want to do. I think just the best thing any of us can do is to be really curious and have our eyes open and be ready for the changes that happen. Because what I will tell you is that when those exciting new things happen, I want to do something in them.
Yes, and you will. I think it's very, very clear to everyone in this room that
you.
you're going to do that. So thank you. This has been a really great conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you guys for spending time with us tonight.
Yes, thank you, everybody.